Yeah, guys, before we switch over to football, I want to remind everybody that you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. And don't forget to be sure to check out the FanDuel Profit Boost tokens in the app. You can use them for the UNC Duke game. Profit Boost tokens will be available before the big game. You can view them in your account page, and you can learn more about your boost right now. You just have to visit fanduel.com/UCSS and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Guys, free agency. It feels like it's coming quicker this year. It probably isn't, but maybe because the Browns went to the playoffs. I don't know.
Yeah, it does feel.
But free agency starts Monday.
Yeah.
I believe at noon is the beginning of the tampering period, and then Wednesday at 4, I think, is when guys can officially sign. But as we know, unlike baseball, in football, everything happens in those first couple of days. So next week's going to be bonkers in terms of free agency. One thing I did not expect to read yesterday afternoon was an article by Mike Florio on ProFootballTalk where he said he's heard from sources that the Browns talked with Joe Flacco last week and that Flacco's first choice is to remain with the Browns. That was stunning to me. Now, maybe it means nothing, and maybe it's not going to happen. The reason I was surprised is because I got the sense that Joe thought he would have a chance to be a starter. Now,
he told us that on this very
right.
show.
Now, I don't buy that any team wants to go into the season, as well as Joe played. I don't think at his age there's going to be a team that wants to go into the start of the season with Joe as their starter. I do think there's probably a lot of teams now that would love to have Joe as a backup. And if Joe has got to the point, guys, where he's like, nobody's making me a starter. I'm not, Now, could you go to a team with a rookie quarterback and maybe be the starter for a few weeks? Maybe. But nobody really – and if he's resigned that, okay, I'm going to be a backup, well, I might as well go back to the Browns. I had such a great experience there. But I wasn't expecting to hear that. Were you guys surprised when you heard it or no? And are you buying that there's something here?
No, I ain't surprised. Look, man, you got to look at it from a strategic standpoint. This is a Game of Thrones move. He's like, listen, man, sometimes you could be the hand of the king and that be bad. Sometimes you could be the hand of the king and that turn out very well because you calling the shots because you perceive that you got a king that needs your help that's like 12 years old. And you're like, I'm really the king by default. I'm really that guy over Tommen. I'm really that guy over Joffrey until he got old and deranged.
Joffrey was such a
so crazy.
Worst character ever.
Yeah, worst character. See, this is why you watch this show because you get those little references.
Now, Reek was, what's his name, was even worse.
Listen,
not Reek, that guy.
That should be over.
Ramsey, God.
That's a whole nother guy.
Chills from that.
Now, this guy, Flacco,
Yeah.
Think about it. He came in, he's beloved in the city now. He's the comeback player of the year. He's comfortable with the people in the locker room. They're going to give him a bag. Right? They're going to give him a bag. He's played games. And let's just be clear about it. He's backing up a guy who potentially is coming off an injury, or he is coming off an injury.
Yeah.
He's throwing the ball, but who knows what happens with that. Has not particularly played well in the last 2 to 3 years. And you feel like the Browns are already going to upgrade the offense. They're already upgrading the receivers. They're going to get a bunch of stuff ready for the – then you got Chubb coming back. He's like, listen, if something happened or he don't play well, I'm in a very good position right now because I got Chubb. I got some new receivers. I know the offensive line. I feel like my arm is just as good as anybody in the game, and they're going to give me a bag. Let me call Cleveland up and tell them, let me show up. Joe Flacco, I'm back in the building. He's not scared.
I agree with G in a lot of ways. I think from Flacco's perspective, I could see why if he doesn't have a guaranteed starting spot, Cleveland would be the perfect opportunity to come in. Even though he said when he was on this show, he said on your podcast, well, I want a chance to start. He's the bona fide QB2 here to begin. I mean, Deshaun has to prove to us he can stay healthy for 17 games before I think any of us can fully believe he'll be capable of doing that, right? Like, I don't think that's a far-fetched assumption. And if you're Joe Flacco and you want to play, well, if you're not going to get an opportunity to start off the bat, you kind of would bank on going to a team where a quarterback has some health issues. And especially
Plus, the coach. You know the receivers.
And you know the infrastructure.
Yeah,
and clearly, he was beloved by the fans here. They welcomed him with open arms.
Right.
If Mayor Bibb was like, let's build the Joe Flacco statue downtown right now, would a single person oppose? Like, no. So to me, it makes sense from that standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it makes as much sense from the Browns standpoint, but I'm curious what you think.
Well, I've thought a lot about this.
Because Jason, I want to hear what you say. Because Jason, he says this is a dangerous game.
Jason, it is a dangerous game.
Real quick, Tyvus has said that too, and he's been in NFL.
And Dustin has said similar things. By the way, a lot of people have been asking me about Dustin. He's doing very well. I spoke to him yesterday.
Shout out to Dustin.
Shout out to you, Dustin.
You'll hear from him soon. I'll just say that. I don't want let him talk for himself, but he's doing really, really, really well. So there can be an issue when there's two things here. There's two potential issues with Joe Flacco. One is how will Deshaun Watson react to them signing a guy who's maybe he sees as a legitimate threat. The other is the other players in the locker room. Some of them may be thinking, "Oh, we played better with Joe last year. I want Joe to play." Now, the first one, I'm going to give Deshaun Watson the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people don't, and I've been very critical of him recently, deservedly so, in my opinion. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think Deshaun Watson, even with some mental hurdles that he's had to overcome the last couple of years and will still continue to have to overcome, I think he believes in himself. There's no way in my mind that Deshaun Watson became as good in the NFL as he was before coming to Cleveland if he didn't think he was better than a 39-year-old Joe Flacco.
I agree.
So I have no concern from that angle. The other thing is legitimate, is can it be a distraction internally? Not what the fans think, because the players for the most part don't care about that. But what do the players in the locker room think, and do they think Joe Flacco could start? And that was my biggest holdup on bringing him back. But the more I thought about it, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it this morning, I said to myself, even if I remember Dustin saying to me in Buffalo that, because when he was in Buffalo, they had no quarterback. All their quarterbacks sucked. And their third-string quarterback, that he and a lot of the other players thought that third-string quarterback was the best guy. But ultimately, it didn't change how they played. It didn't affect how hard he or they worked.
Yeah.
Yes, could it? Can you have a thought? Oh, that guy should be playing over that guy. Don't you think in every locker room there's guys saying, forget just quarterback. That linebacker's better than that linebacker. That offensive lineman's better than that offensive lineman. This is part of the deal. You're grown men. You're professionals. Yes, there will be some guys thinking that Joe Flacco should play, especially if Deshaun Watson doesn't play well. But if Deshaun Watson plays well, none of that matters. And ultimately, Joe Flacco, the only negative maybe from a cap perspective, but as we've seen time and time again, the Browns don't care. The cap took the biggest jump in the history of the league, and the Browns don't care. I have given Jimmy Haslam credit for this. He doesn't care how much the team spends. So to me, I think Joe Flacco makes a lot of sense.
I think D'Anthony Bell brought it up. He said, man, look, I said, what do you say when people say, you got controversies in the locker room and all this good stuff and who should start and who should play and so-and-so got in trouble? He said, man, I'm just trying to not go back to the hood.
That's it. D'Anthony, do you think he gives a crap who the quarterback
I said, thank you. They don't care nothing. He's one play away.
What do we think? We think if Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio think Joe Flacco's a better starter, what are those two guys not going to play hard for Deshaun Watson? Give me a break.
Yeah, I don't buy that side of it.
Yeah.
I do have one other question, though, and I'm not sure if it's a concern, just a question, but
yeah.
Deshaun has said they're going to throw the ball this season. They hired Ken Dorsey. They're clearly going under a philosophical change to the offense.
I don't believe that.
You don't?
No, because I think the plan all along has been to throw the ball more. They just couldn't do it last year because he didn't play well enough early, and he was hurt.
Well, fine, but I'm saying a philosophical change from what the offense Joe Flacco ran here was last season.
Okay.
To whatever we see in 2024 from Ken Dorsey.
Joe Flacco, this is the crazy thing about it. Flaccovelli is like, this is what I do.
Well,
I throw the ball too.
Yeah.
Hey, don't paint me into a play because I can play action. Don't get it twisted.
That's not necessarily what I'm trying to say.
What are you trying to say?
I guess what my point is, under what Flacco and Stefanski had developed last season, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about, and I know you said it, they had some sort of innate connection where
they had a chemistry.
They knew what each other did best.
Right.
We don't know who's going to call plays, and frankly, I don't think that matters for this part of the discussion. In terms of whatever offense they come up with in the week leading into the game, into the weeks and months leading into this season in general, going off what we know from what Watson said on his podcast, from what I think from the Dorsey hire, from all the other guys they've brought into this offensive staff, it's going to be a much more predominant shotgun offense than it was under center. Now, that doesn't mean Joe Flacco can't play in the shotgun. He had done that for part of his time in Denver. That's mostly what he did in New York. A little different than what he did in Baltimore. But I'm not sure if he's exactly the same fit.
But
that when Stefanski talked about the quarterback room, we want our guys to have similar skill sets. Now, maybe that's completely out the window because Flacco did what he did last season. But he still doesn't fit the mold of what you'd want
Mike, I hear you saying,
in that archetype offense.
I hear you saying, but I don't think it matters because ultimately, if Joe Flacco becomes the quarterback at some point next year for whatever reason, most likely injury.
They can always go back to the other
They
offense.
go back to what a coaching staff should do what gives their quarterback and their offense the best opportunity to succeed.
I didn't say
you have to adjust.
I was just a question to ask when
I don't
looking
know.
at the whole situation.
I'm not as convinced as everybody else that the offense is going to go through this drastic change because Ken Dorsey is here. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But I don't think it's a big deal.
I love it from this competitive standpoint. I love the fact that next year, I thought it was an error when you say, okay, we got DTR and he's a rookie. You know, you're not going to be pressed by no rookie. Like you're not going to be. And last year, for the first few years, the goal was not to press Deshaun Watson. It was, hey, let's get him acclimated. But we right here at 3-4 years. I think there's nothing more impressive and there's nothing more different from having a brand new coach, because that brand new coach don't know you from nobody, right? So he just coach. He learned about everybody from day one. A brand new offense, and you're playing against a guy that is not a rookie or a young dude. You're playing against a veteran. So when they in there going X, Y, Z, blah, 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 Joe Flacco in there like, oh, yeah, we used to run a variation of that in Denver. We used to run a variation of that. So what you're saying is this is X2C jet 34 seam. Yeah, same thing. And Deshaun in there, and Deshaun is very smart. He'll pick it up quickly too. But I love the idea of Joe Flacco coming out in 2 days in practice and camps and people saying, dang, look at that ball Joe threw. And Deshaun say, that's a nice ball. He threw a nice ball. Every throw now has something on it. Now Deshaun got to lock in and say, listen, I got a dude underneath me that is a bona fide thrower of the football. So I got to lock in. It ain't going to be no like every game, every practice is competition. And I think Deshaun needs to have that competition to bring back that fire because he's not going to just go out there. DTR and PJ Walker ain't behind him. This is Flacco with a ring.
Well, let me ask you this, G.
It's true.
I'm with you. Iron sharpens iron. All positions across the board. They want to sign, if Andrew Berry wants to allocate money to 33 defensive tackles this summer,
Right.
so they could whittle them out and get the 4 best. Like, I'm all for that at every position group. In a hypothetical world, if it was Brissett or Joe Flacco as the 2 potential QB2 options, we know Deshaun and Joby were super tight when they were here.
Yep.
Flacco, we think they have a decent relationship. We don't know to the same level as we knew for sure.
Jacoby's no threat.
No
But
threat.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if those are your 2 options, would you rather have Jacoby, the no threat, or Flacco, the theoretical, could be a threat to push Watson? Which scenario do you think would be best to get the best out of Deshaun Watson?
I'm taking the threat, and even though he's not no crazy threat, like he's going to do it in a professional way. He's not going to rock the boat. Flacco understands he's been a backup and a starter in this league. He's been out of the league before, so he knows what the role is. But the thing I like best is the fact that it is going to push him, and it gives the Cleveland Browns the best chance to win in the event that Deshaun Watson goes down. Because if you ask the team, they like Jacoby Brissett. But listen, that's why I threw that in the chat. We were talking the other day. I said, listen, I feel very comfortable with Flacco winning me some football games. If you got a Chubb, that's 90 to 95%. You go out and get a free agent receiver, get somebody in the draft, and then get you another stud up front. Now we can let the defense shine, but still, he's going to benefit because Joe Flacco can get the football in different places of the field that Jacoby Brissett can't.
And ultimately, we talked about this when the season ended. This is an incredible gauntlet in the AFC led by a behemoth in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the only way you can ultimately get past Kansas City is that you have Deshaun Watson playing like he did in Houston or somewhere close to it. But there's steps along the way. And if Deshaun Watson is going to miss a few games, there is no better option for the Browns to win those games than Joe Flacco. There is not a better option.
I agree.
At least, certainly not a better proven option. Doesn't mean there couldn't potentially be a surprise guy, but there's no better proven option. And ultimately, let's say Deshaun Watson has a tremendous season, plays 14 games, but he misses 3 weeks. The Browns' record in those 3 weeks that Joe Flacco or anybody else could play could be the difference between the 1 seed, the 2 seed, the 3 seed.
Home
playoffs.
How
or
big
no
a deal
playoffs.
would that be?
I mean, we're talking playoffs versus no playoffs potentially. In
That's
3
right.
games. Yeah.
And if you're going to have any chance against the Chiefs, you would think. I know the Bengals did beat them in Kansas City one year, but if you're going to have any chance for the most part, you want to be at home.
And this year's schedule for the Browns is daunting. Like, they
Big
play
time.
a lot of really good quarterbacks. You know, not take anything away from last season.
Yeah.
They played a pretty cupcake schedule in terms of their opponent quarterbacks, especially who was healthy when they played them.
Yeah.
You look at the raw schedule for next year, it's a who's who of who are the top quarterbacks in football. So if a guy like Joe Flacco could keep the boat afloat for 2 or 3 weeks and give you at least a puncher's chance to beat a Baltimore, a Cincinnati, I'm pretty sure they play Kansas City, a Philadelphia. I think, is Miami back in the schedule?
I believe so.
Like, the Chargers are back in the schedule. Like, any of those teams.
The schedule's brutal.
You have to be able to
brutal.
score points.
Yeah.
And Flacco, we saw last season, he wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Certainly had the turnover issues, but he at least gave you an opportunity.
Who would have thought,
played.
McNuggets, that Joe Flacco would be under Project Stockpile? Who would have thought?
He may, and that's just part of free agency and Project Stockpile.
A lot of other parts.
We're going to get to running backs. Obviously, we spent a lot of time on wide receivers, and we will tomorrow, Friday, all next week. But quickly on the wide receivers, now that the franchise tag period is over. When we first started talking about free agent wide receivers, even before the season was over, the top 3 guys we mentioned are all gone. T. Higgins, franchise tag. Michael Pittman, franchise tag. And Mike Evans, when it looked like he was going to become a free agent, signed a 2-year extension.
They weren't even close to getting there.
No. 3 best guys off the board. How panicked are you or concerned that those 3 guys are off the board, guys?
I'm not panicked. I kind of expected it, to be honest. I thought
Evans was going to get the free
Evans
agency.
could, but I also
Although
thought,
I didn't really think the Browns were going to sign him anyway.
That was my thing. If it came down to money and Evans had his choice, I just think he would have ended up signing elsewhere. So I was always looking more in the Marquise Brown, Gabe Davis, Calvin Ridley bin for realistic opportunities. Even a Curtis Samuel's a guy I'm starting to believe a little more could be the wide receiver target for Andrew Berry. But I just think it puts a bigger emphasis on AB going after someone on the defensive line to boost that side of the ball as opposed to making a home run swing in the wide receiver.
I think more and more now than ever, I'm starting to look at that number 2 pick over pick number 54 as a potential package for a veteran wide receiver today.
The problem is, I mean, you can't get a top 15 wide receiver without giving up a first-round pick, and they don't have one.
Yeah, they don't have one. That's why that pick would have to come in with somebody else or a potential another pick to get another guy. Now, look, it's a little alarming. It basically just takes off. It's like playing a Powerball, right? You're excited the night before, then Powerball number come out, and you don't got the winning numbers. You're like, I wasn't going to win anyway. T. Higgins was all, the Bengals was not going to let that go down. Pittman and then Mike Evans looked like he got there, but I always said that's far-fetched. To me, the realistic guys was the Hollywood Browns. The realistic guy is Gabe Davis. And I don't know, I don't even think if Stephon Diggs is really a guy that's realistic. I mean, if you're talking about him getting into the mix of things. So now you say, would you take a Brian Burns? Would you take a Wilkins?
Well, Burns got franchise tag too.
So he's out the mix.
Yeah.
Defensive tackle Wilkins, like Christian Wilkins.
Now, he's in the conversation.
He's in the
Jonathan
conversation.
Allen.
Jonathan Allen.
I mentioned this yesterday, real quick, yes or no, but hypothetical trade.
Yeah.
Allen for Wyatt Teller, would you do it? We spent a bunch of time on this yesterday. So
Yeah.
They both have 2 years left on their deal.
Yes.
Allen has a slightly bigger cap hit, so you take on about $5 million.
Probably, yeah.
but-
Yes.
White Tail was their best offensive lineman.
Jason said no at first. By the end of the discussion, he said yes.
Because here's
it's tough. But
because here's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would just move I'm either moving Conklin, DeJuan Jones, or
a lot of injuries there.
Wills to guard.
Yeah.